Jürgen Thiedje, European Commission, Head of Unit DG Research and Innovation. Thank you.
Where should I sit?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Thank you. And then Francesco Lecis, EY Industrial Product Consulting Leader. Francesco. And then Hans Krattenmacher, so Eurodrive, Chief Technical Officer, Mechatronics. Thank you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hi. Hello.
Well, let's remind the phone number for the question. We want this to be an interactive discussion, so please feel free to send your question to +39 347 74 67 130. Okay, so we can start. Thank you for being here. And well, I want to start with Jürgen Thiedje. Let's start from the 22 World Manufacturing Report. What are the key takeaways from your point of view?
First of all, let me say I'm very happy to be here. We are really back after COVID-19, and it's good to see you, Marco, and so many other people here. Europe has already been mentioned several times this morning. I think it's an excellent report. And it's a bit looking forward, and we should use this report also for European discussions. We have a partnership made in Europe. We have EIT manufacturing, and I can only invite Marco, bring this report into those discussions. I was looking into the redesign goals. I liked them a lot. If you would like to apply the sixth one, and I was cognitive manufacturing, circular manufacturing, global risk resilient manufacturing, hyper-personalized manufacturing, rapidly responsive manufacturing, inclusive manufacturing. If I take the perspective of a small and medium-sized company who is not in the world of Industry 4.0 and is late in digitization, good luck. That's a tough one. But maybe I think it's the right way forward. And I would say, since we are here all admiring the Porsches and you're a driver, cognitive manufacturing, you drive. Circular manufacturing, if you don't want to drive, the Green Deal will drive you. And the circular economy will actually become a reality in terms of technology. It's no longer a buzzword. It's getting very serious, in my view, in particular when it comes to data management. Hyper-personalized manufacturing, customized manufacturing. I just was listening to the previous speakers. You will face products which should be designed for the individual needs of a customer. So this will be the driving forces. What has changed is, I think if I look at the other ones, that you can no longer say, you look a bit, you want to drive fast and you look at the rear window. No, when you shift the gear, you have to look at global risks. And you have to look that you have the workforces inclusive, keeping them. So that's actually the message I see coming out of it. I felt that this debate about globalization or deglobalization, the world has changed. So I think what we should really do when it comes to the debate on the globalization, to build on what we have learned. And so I'm not a less of this fan now, we are deglobalize. I learned this nice term, slowbalization. I need to digest this. I think what small and medium-sized companies will face, and there I'm pretty sure, will be a huge diversification of the supply chains. And if you're a small and medium-sized companies and you're not digitized, you're not using digital twins, that's going to be very tough, because we need to work, for instance, on digital twins, on value chains, servitization, so the world starts moving faster. Therefore, I do not believe that we can say it's either or. The globalization will look differently. Yes, you will have more regional markets because there maybe the supply and risk are better managed. But I would not speak about deglobalization. I think that's the wrong approach. We have big European players and they remain global. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we will go back to globalization, but in the meantime, Hans Krattenmacher, well, manufacturing is adopting a new approach to supply chains, basically from cost optimization to risk minimization. Well, I want to know, what are the consequences in your view?
So first of all, always thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I think the last decade, maybe the last 2 decades, we had been all wrapped in a kind of cotton. We just said, okay, globalization means that I can look for the best processes, best suppliers, in terms of cost optimization, as well as quality. and we had been looking on quality and on cost, and we'd been looking for first and second tier supplier, but we didn't care about what happened if there is suddenly a limitation. And I think this will be changed dramatically in the future. That's what we're doing in our company. We say, okay, maybe we have to move over from cost optimization and process optimization to risk optimization, because at the end, if you can't supply your customer at all, this is the largest threat. And what we have learned the last 18 months is, or 24 months, is that we all underestimated limitations in terms of logistics, in terms of a war, in terms of pandemic. If you suddenly are not able to supply your customers because you are not supplied by your suppliers. And at the end now, the consequence is how to organize in the future. Can we believe that we go back to the kind of globalization as we had it before? Maybe. At the end, nobody knows. Nobody knows what will happen in the next decades. And this means you have to move over to a pure risk-oriented supply chain management. That's it, and that's what we are doing. We said, okay, we look on our suppliers where they are located. We're looking for our customers where they are located, and we try to organize in a way that we produce local for local. Giving you an example, we are strong in China, in Europe, as well in America. And we had the great luck that for other reason, we are organized in the way that we are very local. So we produce local for local. And this was for the reason because we wanted to be close to our customers. But we didn't have done this for our supply chains. And this is what we want to change in the future. We said, okay, we also want to organize our supply chains. We're looking for, first of all, where are raw materials available? Then what about the procurement market? What is the first and second tier supplier? Then how can we produce it? And then going to the customer and then to the end customer. And this we want to implement in that way for Asia, for Europe, and for America. This means that we have to reshore some of our abilities to Europe, but also vice versa. We have to install some abilities in China as well as in America, so that at the end, that the risk is a little bit lower, pretty much lower as today, and that if one region is struggling, that we can compensate it with the other region. The challenge is to keep the quality in all regions on the same level, to organize the supply chains on the same level, and to keep the technology, the product, the behavior of the product on the same level if you produce them in China or in America or in Europe. But for me personally, I think there's no other way. Believing that you can do something in a centric way and then distributing it all over the way, or to get components or raw material from the center point in the world. We have heard raw materials are located mainly in China, for example, rare magnets for our electric motors. I think this you can't manage it anymore in that way. You have to distribute to the risk over the world. We know in technology we have one rule if we have to lower risk. This is redundancy and diversity. And I think these two rules we also have to apply for our supply chains and for the organization of FAB. If you're doing like that, globalization will still happen. That's for sure.
Well, Francesco Lecis, well, based also on what Hans said, do you see a new paradigm in manufacturing, and how do you see supply chains changing? Also, if your clients are reshoring, are nearshoring, what's happening?
Okay. No, thanks again also for inviting me here. Elaborating on your question, I think that I'm definitely agree with both of you in the sense that globalization definitely is not over, because market is global, and is global both for big companies and also for mid-caps. In Italy, we have a lot of small and mid-caps companies. And if I look to what clients are asking us in terms of transformation project in the last couple of years, I think that this point of, let's say, risk mitigation on the supply chain, meaning in reconfiguring the overall footprint of the companies, so also deciding which plants to keep for produce and which suppliers to keep to supply, is somehow 90% of the operation assignment we are doing. On the other hand, I think that adult companies or advantage companies are not looking to this risk mitigation just in terms of defense, meaning that the reconfiguration and the reshoring of the supply chain is not just I mitigate the risk of business continuity, but it's also somehow I gain a competitive advantage in having shorter lead time and faster reaction time to the market, or I'm gaining competitive advantage in having a diversified panel of possible suppliers. In other words, the companies that are ahead are looking to this reconfiguration of the footprint in creating a competitive advantage idea. And also for companies that has to serve a global market, this is somehow as a cost that has to be evaluated, and you need technologies in order to do it or to manage it. But if I think, let's say, on an overall level, I'm seeing, in particular, Italian companies, which are the one I'm following, that are somehow reconfiguring the supply chain with, in particular, nearshoring, so coming from long leg from Far East to maybe, let's say, medium leg in the Mediterranean basin. On the other hand, also looking to new logistic footprint to serve the market. So these are the two, let's say, main pillars we are looking at now. But I think that the key point is try to exploit the occasion to rethink to the overall footprint, because this is something that, let's say, is creating already advantages, in particular to all the companies in our industrial market, that has also to reconfigure the product panel. Because if we think to all the tier one automotive companies, it's something that is on the table in terms of innovation and changing the way itself they're making manufacturing.
Well, I want to go back to the big question with Jürgen Thiedier. So you said globalization is not over, okay, but do you see supply chains become less global? And also, if you agree, you mentioned also before, if you agree with what Professor Teisch said this morning, so that we are in front of globalization.
Thanks for the question. It's not a big question for me. I think it's a big question for many companies. Let's first of all, and they might be best placed to answer it. What you clearly see, I take an example, batteries, Umicore, goes public and says, well, we want to be less global. We would like, in terms of managing our risk, focusing more what we can do in Europe. This, I think, is a credible choice. Because at the end, globalization was not done for the sake of having globalization. It's about reducing costs, have better quality. That's why we went for globalization. If you can get it better at a regional level, do it. So Umicore is such an example. Therefore, I think we cannot say there is a global trend towards deglobalization or globalization. I think what we have, of course, to see, and that maybe companies underestimate, when it comes to supply chains in Europe, Critical Raw Materials Act. Europe announced next year there will be Critical Raw Materials Act. There we will start talking about mining, stockpiling of critical raw materials. All of a sudden, you have actually strong public interventions because they see there's going to be a big issue. The same with the CHIPS Act. A strong public intervention to say we have to restore certain supply chains. We call it open strategic autonomy. Also to be really on the safe side and not that actually later on we have not the semiconductors or chips, or you have a local conflict somewhere in Asia, and we don't understand why this is escalating here in Europe, if you take the examples of chips. Mm-hmm.
Well, Hans Kratenmacher, you are a B2B global player, so basically you have an overview of what's happening. And I want to know, what is your approach? You mentioned also before, but also your clients' approach in facing these many challenges, and how do you minimize the risk? For example, with China, we are listening these days to the news. Basically, is closing again because of COVID. So, how to minimize the risk, the many risks that we are facing right now?
Yeah, good question. We spoke several times in our company, what about decoupling, as it is also so named from China, or decoupling from US, or for whatever country. I think I also agree globalization is not over. People want to trade because trading usually brings people together. And so this will always happen. But I think we have to accept that globalization will change its face from time to time. It will be not always in the same manner. And now coming to your question, how to act on the behavior of our customers. So first of all, we always try to be very close to our customers. This is our basic philosophy, and now we recognize that in this new global world, this is the best, obviously, the best approach, to be more decentralized. We are highly decentralized. We have made simulation what would happen if we are not able to supply China from Europe anymore in a direct way. And we recognize that, okay, we can isolate our Chinese subsidiary completely. They can do their business and we can do our business. And this is what I really strongly can recommend to everybody, to reduce the dependency between your subsidiaries. Try to serve local by local. And if your customers are going locally to China, try them to serve them from China, from Europe, from America to America. This is the most stable way to organize, at the end, a fab or a company, because you reduce the dependencies. The more dependencies you have, the more threatened you are, the more fragile is your system. And in former times we have done this for the supply chain in the direction of the customer, for the B2B business. Now we're doing it also in the other direction, means for our supply. And I think this will be the future for us. That's trying to reduce dependencies. We don't know what kind of limits will popping up in the next couple of years. We had the Brexit. We thought, okay, Brexit will be easygoing. We already have spent more than 2 million euro only for qualification. We've did nothing. We haven't improved anything in our product. Only qualification, 2 million. There's the first barrier. We have these limitations in some Asian countries as well as in US. It's not only that we're talking about China. This means we have to accept that barriers can popping up. I absolutely agree. Nationalism is increasing all over the world. So we have to expect that we get suddenly limitations we didn't have expected in the past. And this means be agile. I also agree we have to think in a new way when we're designing our products. We just started with that, to do it in a modular way, that we can react on that. It was a nice recommendation not to overreact, but to be honest, the last 8 months we only had to overreact, because if you are 3 months out of production, you really overreact. But I agree, we have to come back, and at the end you have to make your designs in the way that you can replace even complicated parts of your products in an easy way. I would like to give you one example. We have made, in the meanwhile, for example, especially our electronic designs, in a so-called multiple design. So we have complicated components, which in former times you really would do only in one design for cost reasons. Now we make multiple designs, so if the one supplier is struggling, that we can move over to the other one. And the next step, what we're doing is, for example, I do not expect that we are allowed in the future to send all kinds of electronic components to China. So we try to identify potential Chinese suppliers providing similar semiconductors, so that we are able to produce the same product with pure Chinese components for China and with European components for Europe. This will not become easy.
Of course.
This will become the challenge for the future to at the end, making the next step in globalization. The time where we can expect that everything is at any time in the amount you need available at the time you wanted to have, these times are definitely over, at least for the next decade. And so that's the reason why we are doing all this.
Well, Francesco, he shared his experience with examples. I want to listen to, maybe if you have any interesting case study to share with us.
No, yes, this one was really interesting in the sense that the idea of delocalization of the know-how is somehow something that is really shortening lead time and fastening, let's say, the decision is something that I'm seeing also in the market. Just to mention a couple of examples of Italian clients, how they are reacting, let's say, to these challenges. From one side, let's say, the idea of coming from the long leg from the Far East, meaning in particular, I'm mentioning the fashion industry for Bangladesh or for Vietnam or for China, coming down to North Africa, for example, is something that, so in an idea of nearshoring rather than reshoring, is somehow shortening the lead time. Obviously, you have to offset the increase of price, or you have to offset, let's say, also the decrease of the potential decrease of quality with some specific supplier development activity. That is more or less the same of, let's say, transferring the technology. So giving the value added, let's say, to the supplier, or find a way to develop in a very fast way a diversified panel of potential suppliers. And this is something I'm mentioning, a company that maybe was used to work in a traditional two-season work, while the market today is asking you to have 7, 8, 9 collection per year. And so how to deal with it if you have 4 months of lead time to your supplier in the Far East. That's why, let's say, the nearshoring created a competitive advantage. The challenge is, let's say, to embed a vast panel of potential suppliers that today has not the capability or has not, let's say, the same quality that is needed. So this enhancement of capabilities is somehow a competitive advantage. On the other hand, the other idea that I'm mentioning is related, let's say, to the high level and high value added activities, in particular of new products, is another client I was mentioning before, the automotive, that somehow came down from UK because of Brexit. So in order to shorten the lead time, Brexit created some issue. And in the end, wanted to create a totally new product for, let's say, circular material in Italy. And this somehow created more than 50 engineer labor work coming down from the UK to Italy. So this can be, let's say, one in the B2C and the other one in a B2B idea, a couple of examples of changing the supply chain footprint.
Well, let's move on the role of policymakers. Jürgen Thierry, I want to ask, obviously, what are the interventions the European Commission is implementing, and also what role do research and innovation play in the European Commission policy?
This is a big question for me now. Since I stand for Horizon Europe, I'm working quite actively in work programs called Digital Industry Space. Actually, the next one is going out now or on Monday. It's a package of 2.7 billion euros in terms of research funding offered to the industry. Where we need to be strong and even stronger. First, we are working a lot with partnerships. We have a strong partnership called Made in Europe on manufacturing. Where we need also to be stronger is when it comes to the whole impact of research. So it's no longer talking about a project has to show us there's an impact. No, the Commission with the players have to organize impact via speed, scale, efficiency. We need to be faster. If you look, for instance, now not on manufacturing, but to energy-intensive industries, these are massive investment cycles. They need to have all technologies ready by 2030 to be climate neutral by 2050. You cannot just indicate to the industry, do it. Or you take SMEs on manufacturing. There are massive amounts where we need to help. And Horizon Europe is a nice instrument, but we need to focus on synergies with other programs. For energy-intensive industries, it's the innovation funds. I think if it is for Horizon Europe, we have to reach out to regional funds, which is not so easy because the regions want to decide, but it's sometimes important to engage with us. We have smart specialization programs which can actually help. And here there are actually many concrete avenues what we can do. In terms of Horizon Europe, we are reaching now our midterm. So next year we will have the so-called strategic plan where I think in terms of the overall policy will remain stable, but there's plenty of opportunities in particular for industry to come in and say for the work programs 2025 to 2027, we need new priorities, different priorities. The one mentioned by Marco Taisch, more resilience, looking also at critical raw materials. Maybe one aspect, critical raw materials has a research component because it's mentioned. And there will be a legal act coming up by March. On the one hand, all of a sudden we start talking about, do we need mining in Europe? I have a research commissioner said, I need to talk about mining? This is not really the knowledge base of Europe. So we will also launch a discussion on advanced materials, and we need one. Yep. Materials with novel properties. That we will do and to be more strategic. But on the Critical Raw Materials Act, I think to reassure the people, in March we want to come out with very concrete measures to come a grip to it, because it's clear that you cannot leave to the supply chains of companies that really help what we can do within Europe, but also member states who need to engage much more with real governance on managing the supply chains for critical raw materials, rare earths, lithium, we know them.
We are receiving a lot of questions for you in the meantime,
okay.
So if you're okay. Well, first question, how to open up more research program like Horizon Europe to Italian manufacturing, small, medium enterprises that are less and less successfully?
I think first, if you're an SME, you need to find a good partner. Don't go on your own. Second point, as an SME, you need to go into partnerships, because partnerships, we call them European partnerships like Might in Europe, devise a roadmap 7 years long. So this gives actually an SME quite a predictable agenda, whether they want to engage, yes or no. The biggest challenge we of course face that sometimes small and medium-sized companies have a very short-term view. I have an innovation, can I explain this in the afternoon? That I cannot deliver. But they need to connect to concrete tools offered by Europe. We take the digital innovation hubs, and we need maybe also something for the Green Deal, which we currently don't have. But there are lots of publicly funded centers, digital innovation hubs, AI centers. In chips, we will have in future competence centers. We have not enough, we will have an open innovation testbeds on hydrogen. So we need much more technology infrastructures to support the SMEs, that we shorten their ways, actually, and they have not just, oh, I need to apply for a call of 15 million euros and work with 50 other partners. This is too tough. So in some, go into the networks to see what's going on, and then look also for technology infrastructures in each member state which actually can help. That would be my very concrete advice.
Well, another question, because after that I want to go with you about circular economy and the role that it can have. Well, Europe has nearly lost the battle versus the US in digital, at least B2C in EV innovation, versus China for semiconductors and chips, rare earths, EV batteries. Is the circular economy products the last chance? How to face it? What do you think on that?
Okay, thanks for the question. I wouldn't say that circular economy is the last chance. I'm a bit ironic now. We need just to move beyond the bubble of circular economy. All of a sudden it's getting very serious. And every company has to judge, do I actually organize a circular value chain, because it actually is less risky than relying on a global value chain. You have heard about gigafactories for batteries. It's everywhere in the press. And there's a strong circular economy component on it. We'll have the same for chips. So circular economy is not the last chance, but it's something where actually people have to think across value chains. So don't think about recycling of textiles. No, which other value chains you can actually engage and turn circular economy in a real opportunity. And I think the other dimension which is missing on circular economy is the data spaces. And because exchanging data, valorizing data, then really circular economy can take off. There I see a big opportunity even. Not the last chance, a big opportunity.
Well, Hans Kratenmacher, do you agree? Because maybe circular economy, we need to consider it as a solution, not just for green transition, but also as a remedy to reduce raw materials needs. So what do you think on that?
I 100% agree with that. When we've analyzed where are the raw materials, looking on Asia, they have all raw materials they need. Looking on America, they have all raw materials they need. Looking on Europe, empty pockets. We don't have other raw materials we need. So moving into a circular economy can be one solution to survive. We have a lot of raw materials installed in our fabs in form of all kind of goods. Why not to reduce these materials? These are really raw materials. We only have to change our attitude. Today, if we're talking about what is a new product, then we're talking about that the new product is I've made it out of raw material. I've made out of the raw material metal, out of this metal a car, whatever. This is a new product. I think the new attitude we have really to go in is a new product is when the estimated and predicted lifetime is fulfilled. If I reuse parts or recycle parts, this doesn't matter. This is raw material. And we try to go in this circular economy. For example, we've really successfully installed a process where we can recycle the brakes for our geared motors, for our electric motors, in the way that we get the copper for recycling, but even more that we get the housings, that we can reuse the housings. And especially for Europe, I think it would be a perfect way to do a better marketing for the circular economy, not in the way that it is green and sustainable, we love the environment. No, this is something to survive. Something to survive because we don't have the raw material in our earth. And I strongly recommend to change a little bit the marketing. It's the same way with conversion of energy. We always say, okay, we have to decarbonize for that reason. We have to reduce the amount of combustion engine, all like this. But what would be if we have a different look on that? If we can generate all the energy we need independent from materials and resources from outside, this is a benefit. And this is a large benefit. And I think we should have a look on the circular economy on the same way, so that it is not something crucial to make everybody happy and to save the environment, no, but also to survive, because these are all raw materials. There's a tremendous work to do, for sure, because this means that the product has to come back to you. By the way, we already have the law for it. This is the law for circular economy. Even today, we are officially only allowed to create products according to the circular economy. But if I would ask all my colleagues responsible for R&D, have you designed your product in that way? I am not 100% sure what the answer will be. I only can encourage it, just do it, go that way. We want to go that way. It will become a way full of barriers, for sure. But once again, I think it is the only way that we really use our resources in the proper way, especially in Europe, because we don't have the raw materials.
Jürgen Tiede, do you want to add something? I saw you saying yes.
I think so. I think if you have to make long-term investments, okay, now a little bit very personal remark, we have many national rates or national percentages as regards renewable energy. Yeah. What about national recycling rates for critical raw materials? That would be a message. And I'm pretty sure the markets will start adapting. And all of a sudden you will have a big move in the recycling. This is a bit off the cuff. This is a very personal remark. Don't know whether it's going to come. But I think that would be something where we can really do a lot. And I think also big companies, let's take a chemical industry, a big chemical plant that can organize so much circularity around this plant. You cannot imagine, like a steel plant as well. They could organize quite a lot. We have plenty of opportunities. And there's also one way actually for ensuring one thing. This is to keep the companies on your territory, that they're not moving away to Asia. It's a different way of organizing things here. But in my view, it's worthwhile really investment. Not only business models, also technologies. It's a big digital agenda which is actually out.
Francesco Lecis, what's your opinion on that?
I was just to add one point in the sense that I do think that the challenge of the circular economy somehow is not a challenge in terms of will to do, it's a challenge in terms of technology, because somehow it is there where we can, let's say, win the battle, meaning that, just to make an example of the chemical products, we are front runners in special polymers, high pressure, resilient, and so on and so forth. So it's not just a matter of, let's say, creating a circular process, it's a matter of inventing new products. So we are at the edge of disruption in inventing new materials and new technology. So it's there where we can play our role, and it's there, I think, where we can win. I think that this is a battle that we can work. And then looking again, not in defense but in attack, is where we can create a competitive advantage with the rest of the world. So somehow we can redesign keeping our intellectual property here.
And also in this challenging environment, what are your expectations for policymakers?
I will steal something that you just said, because I think that from a policymaker point of view, in this era is where we have a lot of money available. So we cannot ask for more money than we have. We can just ask, let's say, to have synergies and ease to access to this support. As you said before, for an SME, find a partner. Yeah. It's something that somehow can be a challenge. So what we can do is somehow to simplify and ease the access to this support.
Hans, what's your point of view? What are your expectations for policymakers?
At the end, my expectations are that we reduce barriers and don't increase them. If we have to react, this is what we heard this morning, we have to react pretty much faster, we have to be agile. If you have to be agile and you have to redesign products or whatever in a short time, then useless barriers are hindering that. If you look on an R&D process, developing the product is 50%, and the second 50% is qualification according to all standards invented all over the world. So this is really a barrier in being more agile. And what I strongly recommend that reduce the barriers where really needed. We need safety regulations for sure, but we have tremendous amount of things to fulfill were really useless. And this is what I said, if we really want to stabilize the supply chains and to make the companies more resilient, then we have to reduce the regulations on the lowest level possible and not inventing each day 5 new regulations.
What do you think on that?
I think it's a fair comment. And it's good that the companies criticize us. We call this better regulation. Because I think when it comes to legislation, which is not my field directly,
of course.
Yes, the Commission proposes, and then you have many member states coming in, and they have all sorts of good ideas. So we have sometimes the scenario, you go in with 1 page into legislative negotiations, and you go out with 4 pages, because everybody wants to find his way. But it's a fair comment, and better regulations, this is a mechanism where also the company should feed in and makes a cost argument, because it's a valid argument, yeah? In particular for SMEs. Absolutely happy to take this criticism and also to get examples in this regard. Because under the Green Deal, I'm pretty sure there's a lot to come. And it will require another wave maybe to look at the cost for companies as well.
Well, we have received another questions for all of you. So what's the biggest challenge going forward? Maybe we can start with you.
To be self-confident, I would say. We speak a lot about globalization or deglobalization. Maybe one remark, no one has mentioned it so far. Why, for instance, does the European Union sit at the table of the G7 and the G20? Because of human rights? Because of the Green Deal? No. Because of a single market which is bigger than the United States. Huh? That's why we sit there. So don't forget the single market. It's actually one of our strengths. And if you see the current discussions on the energy supply crisis, we have this debate no longer at national level, but at European level, because we have a single market. And everybody has a feeling we need to have a fair share and not start thinking everybody can do it in their own corner. So self-confident, I'll rely more on the single market, It's tough times, but I think we have chances to get there.
Francesco?
I think that the biggest challenge is a change management challenge, because I think that we have to shift from the idea of changing because of a reaction of external turmoils to a change as a state of mind for the companies. So we don't have to create, let's say, just resilient but flexible supply chain, and also our idea on how to approach them should become flexible. So what we are doing today should not be just tactical action, but should be somehow strategic. So looking also to the 5-10 years, and also creating all the enablers in order to, let's say, survive or to attack the market in the next 5 to 10 years. So not just, let's say, looking to the next 6 months on working on the energy crisis in order to reshape the organization.
Hans, what's the biggest challenge in this moment?
We spoke about a lot of challenges with the, I call it, new way of globalization, and therefore we have to do a lot of things, but we have to do these new things with less people. So the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is the demographic issue. Less people have to do more things, and now we are in a period of time where we have to reinvent a lot of new things. The way how we design our products, how we produce, and how we organize supply chains. And so, clear answer, the biggest challenge is the demographic issue. There's a lot of things to do, and we have to do this with fewer people as before.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Jürgen Tiedje. Thank you, Hans Kratenmacher. Thank you, Francesco Lecis. Thank you for this discussion and also for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.